My name is Angela, and at 67 years old, I never expected to raise 3 young children again. My daughter Stephanie dropped off Lily, Max, and Jacob at my house 13 years ago, claiming she needed me to watch them for just an hour. That hour turned into days, then months, then years of me raising my precious grandchildren. Now Stephanie has returned with a lawyer accusing me of kidnapping her children. She wants them back, but she has no idea about the envelope I kept all these years. If you're watching this, please drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from, and hit that subscribe button for more life stories that will leave you speechless. After my husband passed away, I settled into a quiet retirement in our modest suburban home in Michigan. We had been married for 35 years, and adjusting to life alone was difficult but manageable. I filled my days with simple pleasures, tending to my garden, where I grew tomatoes and zucchini in the summer, attending my weekly book club with 5 other widows from the neighborhood, and volunteering at the local animal shelter every Thursday. It wasn't an exciting life, but it was peaceful and mine. My daughter Stephanie would visit occasionally with her 3 children, Lily, who was 6, Max, who was 4, and little Jacob, who had just turned 2. These visits brought noise and chaos into my quiet home, but also joy and laughter that lingered long after they left. I cherished these moments, knowing that as a grandmother, I got to enjoy all the fun parts of children without the daily responsibilities. Stephanie had always been a challenging child. She got pregnant with Lily when she was just 19, dropping out of community college to marry Greg, a construction worker she had known for only 6 months. He seemed stable enough at first, tall, hard-working, with a quiet manner that balanced out Stephanie's impulsivity. I had hopes that he would provide the structure my daughter had always resisted from me. But as the years passed, and 2 more children came along, I noticed worrying patterns emerging. They moved 4 times in 5 years, always with a story about better opportunities elsewhere. Greg switched jobs frequently, and Stephanie never held one for more than a few months. They would be flush with cash one visit, bringing expensive toys for the kids, then asking to borrow money the next time I saw them. In the months before everything changed, I noticed Stephanie becoming increasingly distracted during visits. She would step outside frequently to take phone calls, returning with forced smiles and explanations that didn't quite make sense. She lost weight, her clothes hanging loosely on her once curvy frame, and dark circles formed permanent residences under her eyes. When I asked if everything was all right, she would brush off my concerns. "Everything's fine, Mom. Greg's got a new job prospect. Things are looking up," she would say, but her eyes would dart away, unable to meet mine. I tried to help without overstepping. I offered to take the children for weekends to give them a break. I cooked extra meals and sent them home with leftovers. I even suggested they move in with me temporarily to save money, but Stephanie refused emphatically. "We're adults, Mom. We can handle our own problems," she insisted, a flash of the teenage defiance I remembered all too well crossing her face. Then came that Tuesday in April. I wasn't expecting visitors. I was in my garden wearing my old overalls and wide-brimmed hat, pulling weeds from between my spring bulbs, when a car pulled into my driveway. The sound of car doors slamming was followed by children's voices, and I looked up to see Stephanie ushering the children toward my front door. They each carried small backpacks, and Stephanie lugged 2 large duffel bags. I pulled off my gardening gloves and hurried to meet them. Something about their unexpected arrival sent a flutter of concern through my chest. Grandma Jacob cried, toddling toward me with arms outstretched. I scooped him up, noticing immediately that his face was sticky with what looked like day-old juice. His clothes rumpled as if he'd slept in them. Lily and Max hung back by their mother, unusual for them. Lily, always my confident first grandchild, looked worried, her small hand clutching her brother's shoulder. Max sucked his thumb, a habit Stephanie had told me he'd outgrown months ago. "Mom, I need a huge favor," Stephanie said without preamble. Her eyes were bloodshot, darting nervously to the street and back. "Can you watch the kids for an hour? I have an emergency meeting with Greg." "Of course," I said, even as alarm bells rang in my head. "Is everything okay?" The children looked tired. "They're fine," she snapped, then softened her tone. "Sorry, we're all just a little stressed. We've been driving around handling errands all morning." The children's stomachs growled almost in unison, betraying her explanation. "Haven't they eaten lunch?" "It's nearly 2 o'clock," I asked. "We were going to stop after this," she said dismissively, already backing toward her car. "There's some snacks in their bags." "I really have to go, Mom. Greg's waiting." "When will you be back?" I called, as she hurried down my front walk. "Just an hour or so," she called over her shoulder. "Thanks, Mom. Love you. Be good for Grandma, kids." And then she was gone, leaving me standing in my front yard with 3 hungry, confused children and 2 duffel bags, filled with what I would later discover was nearly all their clothing. I guided the children inside and made them sandwiches, trying to mask my concern with cheerfulness. Jacob fell asleep at the table, his little face planted beside his half-eaten peanut butter sandwich. Lily kept looking at the clock, her eyes following the minute hand with each tick. "When is Mommy coming back?" Max asked as the afternoon stretched into evening. "Soon, I promised, though a growing knot in my stomach told me otherwise. She just had some important grown-up things to take care of." By bedtime, there was still no word from Stephanie. No call, no text. I tucked the children into my spare bedroom, grateful that I had kept my daughter's old twin bed and had a trundle underneath for guests. Jacob slept with me in my room, his small body curled against mine, occasionally whimpering in his sleep. I lay awake for hours, my mind racing with possibilities, none of them good. The hours Stephanie had promised came and went, and as the digital clock beside my bed flipped to midnight, I knew with a sinking certainty that something had gone very wrong. As morning light filtered through my curtains, I reached for my phone, hoping to see a missed call or text from Stephanie. There was nothing. I called her number again for what must have been the 20th time since yesterday, but it went straight to voicemail. "Stephanie, it's Mom again. The kids are fine, but they're asking for you. Please call me back as soon as you get this message. I'm worried about you." I made pancakes shaped like animals to distract the children, but Lily, perceptive beyond her 6 years, wasn't fooled. "Mommy's not coming back today, is she?" she asked, pushing her butterfly pancake around her plate without taking a bite. "I'm sure she'll be here soon," I said, forcing a confidence I didn't feel. "Sometimes grown-up problems take longer to fix than we expect." She and Daddy were fighting a lot. Lily confided in a small voice. "About money and stuff." Max nodded solemnly. Daddy said bad words. Really loud bad words. My heart sank. I had suspected things weren't good, but hearing it from the children made it real in a way I hadn't wanted to acknowledge. By the 3rd day, I had established a routine with the children. We would call Stephanie's phone morning and night, leaving cheerful messages telling her about our day. I enrolled Lily in the local elementary school as a temporary transfer student. I dug out old toys from the attic that had belonged to Stephanie, delighting the children with treasures their mother had once loved. It was while unpacking the duffel bags that I found the note, a folded piece of paper tucked into the side pocket of Jacob's backpack, addressed simply to Mom in Stephanie's hurried handwriting. "I need time to sort things out. Kids have everything they need in bags. Lily needs her inhaler at night if she starts coughing. Max won't eat eggs. Jacob has a favorite blue blanket he needs to sleep. We'll call soon. Thank you. Love, Steph. The casual tone, as if she were dropping them off for a planned weekend visit, sent a surge of anger through me. How could she be so cavalier about abandoning her children? What could possibly be so important that she would leave them without a proper goodbye? A week after Stephanie dropped off the children, there was a sharp knock at my door. When I opened it, I found Greg standing on my porch looking haggard and desperate. "Are they here? Are the kids here?" he demanded, trying to look past me into the house. "Of course they're here," I said, blocking his view. "The children were napping upstairs after a morning at the park. Where else would they be? Where is Stephanie?" Greg's shoulders slumped, and suddenly he looked like he might collapse. I reluctantly stepped aside to let him in, guiding him to the kitchen table where he sank into a chair and buried his face in his hands. "I don't know where she is," he admitted, his voice muffled. "She's gone. Cleaned out our bank account. Left her phone behind. I've been looking everywhere." "What do you mean, cleaned out your account?" I asked, alarm growing. "What's going on, Greg?" The story he told me over the next hour left me stunned. Stephanie had developed a gambling problem over the past 2 years. It started small with lottery tickets and the occasional casino visit when they could afford a babysitter, but it escalated quickly. She found online gambling sites, started taking money from their bill fund, maxed out credit cards Greg didn't know they had. "We were going to be evicted," he said, showing me the notice crumpled in his pocket. "Everything was falling apart. I thought we were working on a plan together, trying to figure out how to pay back what we owed. Then she dropped the kids here and disappeared with the last of our money." "Why wouldn't you tell me things were so bad?" I asked, anger and hurt competing in my chest. I could have helped before it got to this point. "Stephanie wouldn't let me," he said, looking genuinely remorseful. "She was embarrassed, said you always thought she would fail, and she couldn't bear to prove you right." The unfairness of this statement stung. I had never wanted anything but the best for my daughter. Yes, I had been disappointed by some of her choices, but I had always supported her, always been there when she needed me. "I'm going to find her," Greg declared, standing up suddenly. "I think I know some places she might go, people she might be staying with. When I find her, we'll get help, pay back what we owe. Then we'll come back for the kids." And until then, I asked, gesturing to the house around us. "I'm not set up for 3 young children, Greg. I'm retired on a fixed income. I don't even have legal authority to take them to the doctor if they get sick." "It won't be long," he promised already, moving toward the door. "A few weeks at most. I'll send money when I can. You're their grandmother. Who better to look after them?" And just like that, he was gone too, leaving me with 3 children and a host of practical problems I had no idea how to solve. That night, after the children were asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad making lists. I would need to turn my home office back into a bedroom, buy a proper bed for Max, get Jacob into daycare so I could work part-time to supplement my retirement income, figure out what legal documents I needed to enroll them in school properly, to put them on my health insurance. My tidy retirement suddenly looked very different. No more spontaneous lunches with friends. No more quiet afternoons with a book. Instead, school runs and soccer practice, and 3 young lives depending on me entirely. Part of me was angry. This wasn't the plan. I had raised my child, already done my duty. These years were supposed to be for me. But as I peeked in on them sleeping, Jacob curled around his blue blanket Max with one arm flung above his head, just like Stephanie used to sleep. Lily, with her long eyelashes, resting on freckled cheeks, another feeling overcame the Rillianausen. resentment. These innocent children didn't ask for any of this. They deserved stability, love, protection. If I couldn't give it to them, who would? I resolved then to do whatever was necessary to give them the security their parents couldn't provide for as long as it took. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the children settled into life with me. We established routines, morning rushes to get Lily to school and Max to preschool, afternoons in the park when weather permitted, Friday night movies with popcorn, Saturday morning pancakes. We heard from Greg sporadically, phone calls full of promises and excuses. He had tracked Stephanie to Las Vegas, then lost her trail, found her again in Arizona, was working double shifts to save money. Would be there for Christmas, then wasn't. Stephanie called once 3 months after she left. Her voice sounded distant emotionally and physically. "How are the kids?" she asked, as if inquiring about pets I was watching while she was on vacation. "They miss you," I said, swallowing my anger for their sake. "When are you coming home?" "I can't yet," she said vaguely. "Things are complicated. I'm working some things out." "Stephanie, your children need you," I said, my voice breaking. "They cry for you at night. They watch the door every time they hear a car. They're waiting for you to come back." "I know, Mom," she sighed. "I'm sorry. I messed up so badly. I need to fix things before I can face them again. Tell them I love them." "Okay." Before I could respond, she hung up. When I tried to call back, the number was disconnected. I didn't tell the children about the call. What was the point? It would only raise hopes I couldn't guarantee would be fulfilled. They asked about their parents less frequently as time passed. Lily stopped setting a place at the table for when Mommy and Daddy come home. Max stopped running to the window at the sound of every car. Jacob, so young when they left, began to refer to me as Mama instead of Grandma, a slip I gently corrected while my heart broke a little each time. The practical challenges of raising 3 children without legal authority became increasingly difficult. When Max fell on the playground and needed stitches, the hospital initially refused to treat him without parental consent. I had to call in favors from a friend who worked as a nurse to get him seen. When Lily needed to go on a field trip, I forged Stephanie's signature on the permission slip, feeling both guilty and justified. I tried to enroll Jacob in a Head Start program only to be told I needed guardianship papers. The same issue arose when trying to add the children to my health insurance. My retirement savings meant to last me through my golden years dwindled rapidly. 3 growing children needed clothes, food, school supplies. Lily wanted ballet lessons. Max needed speech therapy that insurance wouldn't cover without proper documentation. Jacob outgrew shoes, almost monthly. I took a part-time job at the library working while the children were in school. It helped, but not enough. I started selling things: my husband's gold watch, my mother's silver, eventually my car, replacing it with a used minivan, more suitable for carting 3 children to various activities. 6 months after the children came to stay with me, I finally admitted I needed legal help. I found a family lawyer who offered free consultations and laid out my situation. "Without legal guardianship, you're in a precarious position," she explained gently. "If your daughter or her husband showed up tomorrow and wanted the children back, you'd have no standing to object, even if you had concerns about their welfare." "How do I get guardianship?" I asked, feeling overwhelmed by the legal terminology. "Ideally with their parents' consent," she said. "If they're willing to sign temporary guardianship papers, that would be simplest. Without their cooperation, you'd need to petition the court, which could be seen as antagonistic and might damage your relationship with your daughter further." I left her office with a packet of forms and a heavier heart. How could I reach Stephanie and Greg to get their signatures when I had no reliable way to contact them? The answer came unexpectedly 7 months into my new life as a surrogate parent. A certified letter arrived from a law office in Nevada. Inside was a handwritten note from Stephanie, along with a stack of legal documents. Mom, the note read, "I'm sorry for leaving so suddenly. Things got really bad with the gambling. I lost everything, then borrowed from people you don't want to owe. Greg and I are trying to fix things, but it's going to take time, maybe a lot of time. I've enclosed papers giving you temporary guardianship of the kids. There's also power of attorney for medical decisions. I know it's a lot to ask, but they're better off with you right now. I'll send money when I can. I'll come back when things settle down. Please don't hate me. Love, Stephanie." The temporary guardianship papers were signed by both Stephanie and Greg, notarized properly. They granted me legal authority for 1 year with provisions for renewal. I sat at my kitchen table, the papers spread before me, and wept. Relief at having legal standing mixed with profound sadness at the formality of what was essentially abandonment. My daughter had given her children away with the stroke of a pen, as if they were possessions she could no longer afford to maintain. I decided then not to tell the children about the letter or the documents. What good would it do for them to know their parents had legally handed them over? Instead, I filed the papers carefully in a large manila envelope, tucked it away in my filing cabinet, and continued the gentle fiction that Mommy and Daddy were working through some problems and would be home as soon as they could. The years passed, marked by school promotions, lost teeth, new shoes, growth spurts. I became expert at stretching $1, at finding free community activities, at creating celebrations out of small victories. We celebrated birthdays with homemade cakes and handcrafted gifts. We started new traditions, summer camping trips in the state park, winter game nights, by the fireplace spring cleaning parties with dance music blaring. The legal guardianship papers were renewed annually, always arriving by certified mail with brief notes from Stephanie, working 2 jobs now. In a better place, missing the kids, send pictures. I dutifully sent school photos and holiday snapshots, including newsy updates about developmental milestones and academic achievements. The responses when they came were perfunctory. Occasional small checks arrived, usually around Christmas or birthdays, never enough to make a real difference in our financial situation. But I saved them all, depositing them in separate accounts for each child's future education. Greg's communication dwindled to nothing after the 3rd year. When I tried the last phone number I had for him, a stranger answered. I had no way of knowing if he was still with Stephanie or if they had separated, another casualty of the circumstances that had torn their family apart. As the children grew, so did the complexity of their emotional needs. Lily, now 15, was beautiful and accomplished. A straight A student with talent in mathematics and art. But she struggled with trust, keeping friends at a distance, afraid to rely on anyone who might disappear. She had her first boyfriend at 14, a sweet boy from her advanced math class, but broke up with him when he wanted to get more serious, telling me later people always leave eventually. It's better to be the one who leaves first. Max, now 13, channeled his feelings of abandonment into anger. He excelled at sports, particularly baseball, his aggression, making him a formidable pitcher. But he had trouble controlling his temper, getting into fights at school when other boys mentioned parents or family events. We found a good therapist who specialized in adolescent boys, and slowly he began to develop healthier coping mechanisms. Jacob, at 11, was the most outwardly affected. Too young when his parents left to have clear memories of them, he developed anxiety about change and separation. He needed detailed schedules, and advance warning for any deviation from routine. He slept with his blue blanket, now threadbare, and often mended well past the age when other boys would have discarded such comfort objects. He excelled academically, but struggled socially, preferring the company of adults whose behavior he found more predictable than his peers. The phone calls from Stephanie grew increasingly rare, and when they did occur, they were painful for everyone involved. The children would sit stiffly around the speakerphone, answering her questions with monosyllables, their eyes fixed on me, silently pleading for the ordeal to end. Afterwards, we would often have a difficult night. Lily withdrawing to her room, Max punching his pillow in frustration, Jacob having nightmares. Then, 13 years after Stephanie left her children for an hour, the doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon in May. I opened it to find my daughter standing on my porch, looking nothing like the disheveled, desperate young woman who had fled all those years ago. This Stephanie was polished and poised. Her hair was expensively cut and highlighted her nails, professionally manicured, her clothing designer label. Beside her stood a man in a sharp suit carrying a briefcase. Not Greg, but a stranger with the cool, assessing gaze of someone who billed by the hour. "Hello, Mother Stephanie," said formally. "May we come in? There's something important we need to discuss." Stunned, I stepped aside to let them enter. The children were in the backyard, Lily supervising, as Max helped Jacob practice batting for his Little League team. I was grateful for the momentary reprieve before they would have to face this ghost from their past. "You look well," I said, struggling to reconcile this sleek stranger with my daughter. "I am well," she replied, taking a seat at the kitchen table without being invited. "This is Howard Kaplan, my attorney. I've come for my children." The bluntness of her statement left me speechless. Her children, after 13 years of near-total absence, she thought she could walk in and claim them. "Stephanie," I began, trying to keep my voice level. "The children have a life here. School friends, activities. You can't just uproot them without warning." "Actually, I can," she said coldly. "They're my children, legally and biologically. You've had temporary guardianship, which I granted out of necessity. But my circumstances have changed. I'm remarried, financially stable, and ready to be a mother again." The attorney opened his briefcase and removed a document, sliding it across the table to me. "This is a formal notice revoking the temporary guardianship," he explained in a practiced tone. "Mrs. Davidson is requesting the immediate return of her minor children to her custody." I skimmed the document, my hands shaking. Immediate. Without any transition period, without considering what they want. "Their desires are irrelevant in the eyes of the law," the attorney said dismissively. "They're minors. Their legal guardian makes decisions for them." "I'm their legal guardian," I pointed out. "A status granted at my client's discretion, which she is now rescinding," he replied smoothly. "You abandoned them," I said, looking directly at Stephanie, unable to keep the accusation from my voice. "You left them with nothing but a note. They've built a life here. They've healed as much as children can from that kind of rejection. And now you want to tear them away from the only stability they've known for 13 years. "I didn't abandon them," Stephanie said, her voice rising defensively. "I left them in your care temporarily while I sorted out some problems. You're the one who manipulated the situation, turning them against me, making yourself the hero while painting me as the villain." "Is that what you tell yourself?" I asked incredulously. "That I somehow orchestrated this? That I wanted to raise 3 children on a fixed income, draining my retirement savings, working part-time in my 60s to make ends meet?" "I sent money," she insisted. "Occasional checks that wouldn't cover a week of groceries," I countered, while I paid for braces and camp and school supplies and everything else they needed for 13 years. The attorney cleared his throat. The issue of past support is separate from the matter of custody. If necessary, we can address financial reconciliation separately. For now, we're focused on reuniting a mother with her children. You can't just take them, I said, desperation creeping into my voice. They don't even know you anymore. That's your fault, Stephanie snapped. You should have kept them connected to me. How you changed phone numbers constantly. You never provided a stable address. Half the letters I sent came back marked, "Return to sender." I took a deep breath trying to regain my composure. The children are in the backyard. Would you like to at least say hello to them before you start legal proceedings to disrupt their lives? A flicker of uncertainty crossed Stephanie's face, quickly replaced by determination. No. I think it's better to handle the legal aspects first. I don't want to confuse them. You don't want to face them, I corrected. You don't want to see that they've grown up without you, that they have lives and personalities you know nothing about. The attorney intervened. Mrs. Davidson, it might be better to continue this conversation another time when emotions aren't running so high. Stephanie nodded, standing abruptly. We'll be filing papers with the family court tomorrow. Expect a summons within the week. I suggest you prepare the children for the transition. It will be easier for everyone. As they turned to leave, Stephanie paused at the door. I'm not the villain here, Mother. I did what I had to do at the time. Now I'm in a position to take care of my children again. You should be happy for us. After they left, I sank into a chair, my whole body trembling. Through the window, I could see the children in the yard laughing, as Jacob finally connected with the ball, sending it soaring over Max's head. They were happy, well-adjusted despite everything. The thought of them being taken away, forced to live with a woman who was essentially a stranger to them, was unbearable. But what could I do? She was their mother. I was just the grandmother who had stepped in when no one else would. In the eyes of the law, blood might prove thicker than the years of love and care I had provided. The summons arrived 3 days later, officializing the nightmare. I had 72 hours to respond, or risk a default judgment in Stephanie's favor. I called the family lawyer who had helped me with the original guardianship papers years ago, explaining the situation through tears. I can't afford an extended legal battle, I admitted. My savings are nearly gone after raising 3 children for 13 years. There are legal aid options for seniors, she assured me. And given the unusual circumstances, I'm willing to reduce my fee. But I have to be honest with you, Angela. Biological parents have strong rights in our legal system. Without evidence of abuse or neglect, it can be difficult to override those rights, even after a long absence. But she abandoned them, I insisted. Isn't that neglect? She left them with a responsible relative and maintained periodic contact, the lawyer explained gently, and she provided legal documentation for your guardianship. A judge might view that as a responsible parent making arrangements for her children during a difficult time, not abandonment. What about the children's wishes? Lily is 15, Max is 13. Don't they get any say? The court will consider their preferences, especially Lily's given her age, but they won't be the determining factor. We need to focus on what's in their best interest, which means gathering evidence of the stability and support they've had with you, as well as any concerns about their mother's ability to parent. The initial hearing was set for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, I had the heartbreaking task of telling the children what was happening. I called them into the living room one evening after dinner, my heart racing as they settled onto the couch, sensing the seriousness of the moment. I have some news, I began carefully. Your mother came to see me a few days ago. Their reactions were instantaneous and varied. Lily's face hardened, her body tensing visibly. Max's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in suspicion. Jacob looked confused, as if I were speaking about a stranger. "Why now?" Lily demanded. "After all this time, why would she show up now?" "She says her circumstances have changed," I explained, trying to present the situation as neutrally as possible despite my own turmoil. "She's remarried, financially stable. She wants you to come live with her." "No way," Max said, immediately crossing his arms. "No freaking way." "Do we have to go?" Jacob asked, in a small voice, reaching for his brother's hand. "There's going to be a court hearing," I said, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you stay here if that's what you want. But I need to be honest with you. She's your mother, and that counts for a lot in the eyes of the law." "You're our mother," Lily said fiercely. "She gave birth to us, but you raised us. You're the one who came to every school play and soccer game. You're the one who taught me to bake and helped me with my science fair projects. She doesn't get to show up after 13 years and act like none of that matters." Her words warmed my heart, even as they increased my determination to fight. These children had been through enough trauma. I wouldn't let them be uprooted from the only stable home they'd known since they were small. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. My lawyer helped me gather evidence, school records showing my consistent involvement, medical records demonstrating the children's health and well-being under my care statements, from teachers and coaches attesting to their adjustment and achievements. I documented every attempt I had made to keep Stephanie involved in the children's lives, every letter sent, every photo shared. The children's current therapist provided statements about the potential psychological impact of removing them from their stable environment. Friends and neighbors wrote character references. My financial records, though showing modest means, demonstrated consistent provision for the children's needs. The day of the hearing arrived. I dressed carefully in my best suit, a navy blue outfit I had worn to a wedding 3 years earlier. Lily helped me with my makeup, covering the dark circles under my eyes from nights of sleepless worry. "It'll be okay, Grandma," she said, though her own eyes were clouded with fear. "The judge will see what's right." The courtroom was smaller than I expected, wood-paneled and formal. Stephanie sat at one table with her attorney, looking composed and confident in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. She didn't acknowledge the children who sat in the back row with my neighbor, instructed to wait outside until called. My lawyer and I sat at the other table, and I struggled to calm my trembling hands as the judge entered and the proceedings began. Stephanie's attorney presented her case first. He portrayed my daughter as a young mother who had faced financial hardship and made the responsible decision to place her children temporarily with their grandmother while she rebuilt her life. He emphasized her current stability, a new marriage to a successful real estate developer, a spacious home in an excellent school district, financial resources to provide advantages I could never offer. Mrs. Davidson has maintained contact with her children throughout their separation, he claimed, sending funds when possible, keeping informed of their development. Now that she has created a stable and prosperous home, she wishes to reunite her family and provide her children with the opportunities they deserve. When it was our turn, my lawyer focused on the children's established lives and emotional well-being. Angela Morrison has been the only consistent parent these children have known for 13 years, she argued. She has provided not just financial support, but emotional stability during their formative years. Uprooting them now, forcing them to live with a mother they barely know, would cause significant psychological harm. She presented the documentation we had gathered, emphasizing the children's academic and social success under my care, despite limited financial resources. The question before the court today is not who has more money or a bigger house, she concluded, but who has demonstrated consistent commitment to these children's well-being and where they will best thrive emotionally and developmentally. The judge, a stern-faced woman in her 50s, asked pointed questions of both sides. To Stephanie Y., had she waited 13 years to reclaim her children? Why had her contact been so minimal? What steps had she taken to prepare for their return? To me, had I actively encouraged the children's relationship with their mother? Was I financially capable of continuing to support them through college? Was my age and health a factor in my ability to care for active teenagers? Then the children were called to speak privately with the judge in her chambers, one by one. They returned with red eyes, but determined expressions, though I wasn't privy to what they had said. The testimony continued into the afternoon. Stephanie took the stand speaking emotionally about missing her children, about the mistakes she had made, and the stability she could now provide. I was young and overwhelmed, she testified. I got caught in a cycle of bad decisions, but I've worked hard to turn my life around. I've been sober for 10 years. I've built a successful career in hotel management. My husband and I have a beautiful home with a bedroom for each child, a swimming pool, access to the best schools. I want to give my children the advantages I never had. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke from the heart. I never planned to raise my grandchildren, I admitted. When Stephanie left them with me, I thought it would be temporary. But days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and eventually I realized I was the only parent they had. I've been there for every nightmare, every skinned knee, every school triumph, and teenage heartbreak. They are my life, and I am theirs. Mrs. Morrison, the judge interjected, your daughter alleges that you've manipulated the children to turn them against her. How do you respond to that? With all due respect, Your Honor, that's simply untrue, I replied firmly. I've kept every letter, every note Stephanie sent. I've saved every photo I sent to her of the children. I made a memory box for each child, with what little communication they received from their parents, so they would have something to connect them to their mother and father. I never spoke ill of Stephanie or Greg in front of the children. I always told them their parents loved them but were working through problems. As the hearing seemed to be winding down, my lawyer played what we hoped would be our strongest card. Your Honor, I'd like to present one final piece of evidence, she said, passing a document to the bailiff to give to the judge. This is the original letter Mrs. Morrison received from Stephanie Davidson 13 years ago, along with the temporary guardianship papers. I watched the judge's expression change as she read Stephanie's words from all those years ago. Her eyes narrowed, and she looked up at Stephanie with a new assessment in her gaze. Mrs. Davidson, the judge, said this letter contradicts several elements of your testimony today. You stated you maintained regular contact, yet you write here that you were facing serious gambling debts and needed to disappear for maybe a lot of time. You claimed you always intended a brief separation, yet these guardianship papers were pre-signed for renewable one-year periods. Stephanie's attorney leaned over to whisper urgently in her ear. Her face paled. I'd like to see all documentation related to this guardianship, the judge continued, including any renewal notices and accompanying correspondence. My lawyer handed over the large manila envelope I had maintained for 13 years, containing every document, every note, every check Stephanie had sent. The judge took several minutes to review the contents, her expression growing increasingly grave. Mrs. Davidson, she said, finally, did your current husband and attorney know about these documents? Stephanie looked down at her hands. No, Your Honor. Do the children know the full circumstances under which they came into their grandmother's care? It was my turn to answer. No, Your Honor, I said quietly. I never showed them the letters. I thought it would hurt them too much to know the details. The judge looked at me with what seemed like respect. Do they know about this envelope and its contents? Not yet, I replied. The judge called a brief recess to review all the evidence. When court resumed 30 minutes later, she announced that she would interview the children once more, this time with both Stephanie and me present, along with our attorneys. In the privacy of the judge's chambers, with all parties seated in a semicircle, the judge gently explained to Lily, Max, and Jacob that she wanted to share some information with them that might help them understand their family situation better. I'm going to show you some letters and documents, she said kindly. They might be difficult to read, but I think you're old enough now to understand the full truth of what happened when you were younger. She handed Lily the original letter from Stephanie, written 13 years earlier. Lily read it silently, her face growing pale, then passed it to Max. Jacob leaned against his brother to read it together. Mom had a gambling problem, Max asked, looking up at Stephanie with confusion. You left because you owed money to dangerous people. Stephanie nodded, tears streaming down her face. I was sick, she said. Addiction is a disease. I wasn't thinking clearly. I thought I was protecting you by leaving you with your grandmother. You gave us away, Lily said, her voice shaking as she held up the guardianship papers. You signed papers giving us away. It was supposed to be temporary, Stephanie insisted. For 13 years, Lily countered. We waited for you. For years, we waited by the window thinking you were coming back any day. Grandma kept telling us you loved us, that you were working through problems. She never told us you chose to stay away. The judge showed them the file of annual guardianship renewals, each with its brief note from Stephanie. Max read a few aloud, his voice bitter. Can't make it for Christmas again this year. Maybe next year. Send school pictures. Still not a good time to visit. These don't sound like someone desperate to get back to their kids. Jacob, who had been unusually quiet, looked directly at Stephanie. Why do you want us now? After all this time, why now? It was the question at the heart of everything, and the room fell silent, waiting for Stephanie's answer. I always wanted you back, she said after a long pause. I just needed to get myself together first. Now I have a good life, a stable home. I can give you things your grandmother can't. Like what Max challenged. A swimming pool, new phones. We don't need that stuff. I can pay for college, Stephanie offered. Private schools, summer camps, travel. Grandma set up college funds for all of us, Lily said. She puts a little money in every month from her library job. We don't need your money now. I'm your mother, Stephanie said, a note of desperation entering her voice. Doesn't that count for anything? Being a mother is more than giving birth. Lily replied with a wisdom beyond her 15 years. It's being there. Every day. Through good and bad. That's what Grandma did. That's what you chose not to do. The judge asked each child directly if they had a preference about where they would live. Their answers were unanimous and unhesitating. They wanted to stay with me. Grandma's house is home, Jacob explained simply. It's where my friends are, where my school is. It's where I feel safe. After hearing from the children, we returned to the courtroom for the judge's decision. She spoke with measured authority, addressing her remarks to both Stephanie and me. This is an unusual and difficult case, she began. The court generally presumes that reunification of children with biological parents serves their best interest. However, That presumption can be overcome when compelling evidence suggests otherwise. She referenced the documentation of Stephanie's long absence, the minimal contact, the formal transfer of guardianship. Most significantly, she continued, I must consider the wishes of the children themselves, particularly given their ages and their articulate expression of their preferences. Lily Max and Jacob have established lives with their grandmother. They are thriving academically and socially. They have clear memories of their mother's absence and express anxiety about being removed from the home they've known for 13 years. My heart began to race as I sensed where her ruling was heading. Therefore, I am awarding continued primary custody to Angela Morrison, with visitation rights for Stephanie Davidson to be gradually implemented under supervision. Stephanie let out a small cry of protest, but her attorney placed a restraining hand on her arm. Mrs. Davidson, the judge addressed her directly, if you are sincere in your desire to rebuild a relationship with your children, you will respect this ruling and work within its parameters. Demonstrate consistent commitment to visitation and building trust. The court will review the arrangement in 6 months to assess whether expanded visitation is appropriate. She turned to me. Mrs. Morrison, I commend you for your years of dedication to your grandchildren. The court expects you to facilitate appropriate contact between the children and their mother, supporting rebuilding those relationships while maintaining the stability the children need. As the judge adjourned the court, Stephanie rose suddenly, her face contorted with anger. This isn't fair, she exclaimed. They're my children. I have rights. Her attorney tried to calm her, but she shook off his hand. You turned them against me, she accused, pointing at me. You made them think you were better for them than their own mother. I didn't have to make them think anything, I replied quietly. I just had to be there every day while you weren't. Stephanie's new husband, who had been sitting in the back of the courtroom, came forward and led her away, whispering urgently in her ear. Her attorney approached mine, looking embarrassed. My client was not entirely forthcoming about the circumstances, he admitted. We may be in touch about a more reasonable visitation schedule once she's had time to process today's outcome. Outside the courtroom, the children waited anxiously. When I told them the judge's decision, they enveloped me in a group hug, relief evident in their loosened shoulders and tearful smiles. Let's go home, I said, my own tears flowing freely now. We've got homework to finish and dinner to make. Life goes on. And it did. With one major difference: no more secrets, no more uncertainty about their future. For the first time in 13 years, we were legally and emotionally secure in our family unit, complicated as it might be. The months following the court hearing brought new challenges as we adjusted to having Stephanie back in our lives, if only peripherally. As ordered by the court, she began supervised visits, starting with 2 hours every other Saturday at a family counseling center. The first few visits were awkward and tense. The children were polite but distant, answering Stephanie's questions about school and activities with minimal detail. She brought expensive gifts that they accepted uncomfortably, exchanging glances with each other when she wasn't looking. I waited in the lobby during these visits, flipping through outdated magazines without absorbing a word my mind on the interaction happening in the room down the hall. When the time was up, the children would emerge with forced smiles that dropped the moment we got to the car. She keeps talking about taking us to Disney World Max, reported after one visit. Like a vacation would make up for everything. She doesn't even know me, Lily complained. She keeps talking about how I loved ballet when I was little. I quit ballet when I was 7. I've been doing soccer for 8 years. She smells nice, Jacob offered, always the most willing to find something positive. And she remembered that I like chocolate ice cream. We started family therapy sessions, all four of us together with a compassionate therapist who specialized in family reunification, Dr. Seffin. Patterson helped us navigate the complex emotions, the children's anger and sense of abandonment, my lingering resentment and fear of losing them, Stephanie's guilt and defensive justifications. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, Dr. Patterson told us in one session. It means finding a way forward that acknowledges the past without being controlled by it. Gradually, painfully, we made progress. Stephanie became more consistent, never missing a scheduled visit. She stopped bringing extravagant gifts and started really listening to the children, learning who they had become in her absence. I worked on my own fears, reminding myself that the court had affirmed my role in the children's lives. They weren't going anywhere. Stephanie's supervised visits eventually expanded to include outings to restaurants or parks, then afternoons at her home. Her husband, Richard, initially viewed with suspicion by the children, proved to be a stabilizing influence, gently guiding Stephanie when she missed social cues or pushed too hard for closeness the children weren't ready to give. By the 1-year mark after the court hearing, the children were spending 1 weekend a month at Stephanie and Richard's home. It wasn't always smooth, but it was progress. Life moved forward in other ways, too. Lily, now 16, started looking at colleges, her excellent grades, and leadership activities, making her a strong candidate for scholarships. Her interest in mathematics had evolved into a passion for engineering, and Richard, an engineer himself, cautiously offered to introduce her to colleagues in the field. It was the first time I saw Lily genuinely warm to a connection with her mother's new life. Max, 14, and growing tall like his grandfather, channeled his former anger into positive outlets. His baseball skills continued to improve, earning him a spot on the high school varsity team as a freshman. His therapist reported significant progress in emotional regulation, noting that Max had developed impressive self-awareness for his age. Jacob, 12, and entering middle school, showed the most dramatic improvement. As the uncertainty about their living situation resolved, his anxiety decreased. He still preferred routine and advance notice for changes, but he could adapt without the panic attacks that had once characterized his response to surprises. He developed an interest in computer programming, spending hours, creating simple games that made his siblings laugh. I found my own healing path as well. With the legal battles behind us and the children's futures secure, I could finally acknowledge the toll the past 13 years had taken on me. I was 70 by now, with aches in my joints, and less energy than I'd once had. I accepted help more readily, allowing the children to take on more household responsibilities, teaching them life skills in the process. Stephanie and I developed a careful cordiality. Not the warm mother-daughter relationship we'd had when she was young, but not the bitter adversaries we'd been in court either. We shared information about the children's activities and needs. We sat together at school performances and sports events, presenting a united front of support despite our complicated history. "I know I can never make up for those years," Stephanie said to me one day as we waited for Max's baseball game to start. "But I'm trying to be better now." "That's all any of us can do," I replied, surprising myself with the absence of bitterness in my voice. "Try to be better today than we were yesterday." One evening, as I sat on the porch swing watching the sunset, Lily joined me, resting her head on my shoulder like she used to do as a small child. "I've been thinking about something," she said after a comfortable silence. "When Mom left us, it was the worst thing that ever happened to us. But if she hadn't, we wouldn't have had these years with you, and I wouldn't trade that for anything." Her words touched something deep in my heart, a confirmation that despite all the hardship, something beautiful had grown from the broken pieces of our family. Life rarely goes as planned, I told her, putting my arm around her shoulders. The test of character isn't avoiding difficulty, it's how you respond when it finds you anyway. As I look back on our journey, I realize that motherhood comes in many forms. It isn't always the woman who gives birth. Sometimes it's the one who stays when everyone else leaves. The one who makes breakfast and checks homework and holds you when you cry. The one who shows up day after day, year after year, with a love that doesn't waver. I never expected to raise a second family in my retirement years. I never wanted the responsibility or the heartache, but I wouldn't trade a single moment of these precious years with my grandchildren. They have been my greatest challenge and my greatest blessing. If you're facing unexpected family responsibilities, remember that love is not always convenient or easy, but it's always worth the effort. Have you ever had to step up for family in ways you never anticipated? Share your story in the comments below. And if our journey has touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more real-life stories about family resilience and the unexpected paths that lead us home. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to face whatever challenges come your way with grace and determination.